no human can digest wheat. No human has the enzymes to digest wheat. There are many research papers on that, but it doesn't make everybody sick. And it's only after you cross the line, it's called the loss of oral tolerance. When you cross the line, then you have a problem with wheat. So when is that? It depends on the individual. It just really, you can be 2 years old, 22 years old, or 92 years old. But when you lose oral tolerance, and how do you know? If you have elevated antibodies to wheat, if your immune system is fighting wheat, you got a problem with wheat. That's how you know.
You're listening to Food Integrity Now with your host, Carol Grieve.
Hello and welcome to Food Integrity Now. I'm Carol Grieve. I am a certified holistic nutritionist and the host of the show. At Food Integrity Now, we like to investigate and explore what's happening in our food supply so that you can make wise decisions for your health and for your family's health. And I'd like to give a big shout out to Ben Sound Music for our intro and outro music. My guest today is Dr. Tom O'Brien. Dr. O'Brien is an internationally recognized and sought-after speaker and workshop leader specializing in wheat, its impact on health, and the development of autoimmune diseases as they occur inside and outside of the intestines. In November 2016, Dr. O'Brien released Betrayal, the Autoimmune Disease Solution They're Not Telling You, which was an investigation into the global effects of issues underlying the autoimmune system and chronic disease. Dr. O'Brien is considered a Sherlock Holmes for chronic disease and metabolic disorders, teaching that the underlying mechanisms that trigger the development of chronic disease are the key to health. He holds teaching faculty positions with the Institute of Functional Medicine and the National University of Health Science. He has trained and certified tens and thousands of practitioners around the world in advanced understanding of the impact of wheat sensitivity and the development of individual autoimmune diseases. His 2016 groundbreaking book, The Autoimmune Fix, won the National Book Award and ranked first in several categories in Amazon. Dr. O'Brien is founder of thedoctor.com and the visionary behind the Gluten Summit, A Grain of Truth, which brings together 29 of the world's experts on the gluten connection to diseases, disorders, and a wide range of symptoms. Hi, it's Carol. I am the host and founder of Food Integrity Now, as well as a certified holistic nutritionist. And we only support products that we believe have high integrity. We are proud to announce that we will be supporting a new company called True Vani that was started by an amazing food activist, Vani Hari. Their first product is a daily turmeric supplement. And what I love about this product, it's not only organic and non-GMO, it also has a certification that it's glyphosate residue free and contains no heavy metals. Turmeric is a powerful root that has been used for centuries in Ayurvedic and traditional Chinese medicine as a treatment for inflammatory disorders. And when you think about the rise of autoimmune and inflammatory diseases in this country, this timing is perfect. It also has been shown to promote weight loss, supports brain health, and I could go on and on. To purchase this amazing turmeric, you can either go to the show page or go to foodintegritynow.org and you will find it under products. Dr. O'Brien, welcome to Food Integrity Now.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be with you.
Well, I am just a really big fan of yours, and I've read your book, The Autoimmune Fix, which we're going to be discussing today. but I also watched a lot of the Gluten Summit you did, and so I guess we'll start there. There's so much talk these days about autoimmunity and autoimmune disease, and there's a lot of misinformation out there about what is autoimmune disease, and I know a lot of people think, well, it's the body attacking itself. So, can you explain to us what is autoimmunity?
You bet. Technically, I guess you could say the body's attacking itself, but that gives the wrong impression. Mrs. Patient, your immune system is the armed forces in your body. It's there to protect you. There's an Army, an Air Force, a Marines, a Coast Guard, a Navy, IgA, IgG, IgE, IgM, lymphocyte response assay, white blood cells, the differential. There's many, many different branches of the armed forces there to protect you. And what happens is, in the midst of your immune system trying to protect you, it starts attacking these chemicals that we're exposed to, and those chemicals can be in certain foods that you might be sensitive to, or environmental toxins in the water, in the air. And when your immune system attacks these invaders, the signature of the immune system going after these invaders, it looks for certain signatures in the bacteria or certain signatures in the food proteins. And those signatures are amino acids, they're clumps of poorly digested food proteins, as an example. So you get these clumps of the amino acids, and the immune system fights those clumps. When the immune system fights those clumps, it's looking for that signature. And it turns out that that signature is a part of the surface of your thyroid, or the saran wrap around your nerves called myelin, or the part of the tissue of the brain called the cerebellum, or part of the tissue of your muscles called myosin. That the immune system trying to protect you, going after all these toxic chemicals and bad foods that we eat, is looking for them in the bloodstream, but as a result, some of your own tissue looks a little like these toxic chemicals. And it's called molecular mimicry, that the tissue of our own body mimics, or it looks like, these invaders that the immune system's trying to protect you from.
Oh, wow, that makes a lot of sense. So let's talk about what are some of the triggers for autoimmunity?
Well, we know that there's a trilogy in the development of autoimmune diseases. There's at least three things that have to be there. One, you've got to have the gene for that particular disease, and that's the deck of cards that you've been dealt. You can't do anything about that. But that doesn't mean you're going to get the disease. It means that you're vulnerable to that disease. You know, if you pull a chain, the chain breaks at the weakest link. It's at one end, the middle, the other end. It's the heart, the brain, the liver, the kidneys. Wherever your genetic weak link is, that's where the chain's going to break if you pull on the chain too hard. And so the first component in the development of autoimmune diseases is your genetics.
Okay.
The second component in the development of autoimmune diseases are an environmental trigger. And the one that we know without doubt, no one challenges, environmental trigger for a particular autoimmune disease, it's celiac with wheat. That if you have this genetic sensitivity to wheat, you are at high risk of developing celiac disease. But all other autoimmune diseases have the same mechanism, genetic vulnerability, environmental trigger that sets it off. The mechanism is the same, and it may be from wheat or from dairy or from a bacteria. For example, Klebsiella pneumoniae is the most common bacteria that people get in hospitals, and it causes pneumonia, Klebsiella pneumoniae. And so if you get a Klebsiella infection, and if that's the environmental trigger that your body is being exposed to, is a large colony of this Klebsiella, and if you carry a particular gene, it's called HLA-B27, it's a nice Scrabble term, You know, and so that you're at high risk of developing the disease ankylosing spondylitis, Lou Gehrig's disease. Or if you have a colony of strep in your body and your immune system's fighting strep, you're making antibodies to the strep bacteria, because of molecular mimicry, you might develop MS. Because the antibodies going after strep, they look for the signature of strep in the bloodstream, and the saran wrap around your nerves, called myelin, looks a lot like strep. It's got a similar amino acid signature. It looks very similar. So if you get elevated antibodies to strep, if you have the wrong gene, you may have those antibodies attacking your myelin, myelin basic protein, and that's what causes the saran wrap to get worn down. For example, the wire that goes from the battery of the car to the headlight of the car. If somewhere in the middle of that wire, you took the insulation off, but the wire was still solid, you took the insulation off and and that piece of the exposed wire touches the frame of the car, the lights start flickering on and off. And you say, what's wrong with the lights? There's nothing wrong with the lights. It's the wire carrying the message from the battery to the lights. And that's what MS is that it's the wiring, your nerves, that lose the myelin around them that causes the symptoms of MS. And the way you lose the myelin around the nerves is that your immune system makes antibodies to myelin. And you may make antibodies to myelin because you have a chronic strep infection. And your body's attacking the strep, it may also attack your myelin.
And that's called molecular mimicry.
Correct. Molecular mimicry. And there are hundreds of studies now about molecular mimicry. Surprisingly, many doctors aren't familiar with how common this is. For example, with children, if they get strep infections, and if your body makes antibodies to fight the strep, which is a good thing, to keep the strep infection, to get rid of the infection, but if you have these antibodies to strep, the bacteria Streptococcus, you may, because of molecular mimicry, have antibodies that develop that go to your brain. And these kids that have this genetic vulnerability, they get anxiety, they get brain dysfunction. There's a whole syndrome called PANDAS, P-A-N-D-A-S, and it's a pediatric condition with anxiety that comes from a strep infection. But the doctors don't think to check for that, so they give the child a anti-anxiety medication, which is just going to try to put a lid on a pressure cooker, because the problem is still there. And everyone is familiar with another example of trying to protect you from molecular mimicry, and that's when you go to the dentist. For many people, the dentist gives you antibiotics before they'll work in your mouth. Why? Because everybody knows when you're sitting in the dental chair and he's working in your mouth, he squirts some water in your mouth, you spit the water out, some pink water. You got a little blood, a little leakage in there. That's because they've poked hole, in your gums. They've made your gums bleed. Well, that's leaky gut. If you've ever heard of not leaky gut. If you've heard of leaky gut, this is leaky gums.
Yes.
You get leaky gums when you go to the dentist. If you get leaky gums when you go to the dentist, and everyone does that, spits pink water into the bowl. If you get leaky gums when you go to the dentist, the strep that's in your mouth, we have hundreds and hundreds of families of bacteria in our mouth. If strep gets in through the leaky gums, your immune system makes antibodies to strep. Because of molecular mimicry, those antibodies can go after your heart, and you get rheumatic heart disease. That's why the dentists give you antibiotics, is to prevent the need for the immune system to make antibodies to strep, which may, because of molecular mimicry, go after the valves of your heart.
Wow, that's fascinating. Well, this autoimmune disease, in your book, you identify 159 different autoimmune-related diseases that are on the autoimmune spectrum. obviously celiac is one of the big ones. There is an environmental trigger, and that's gluten. But beyond the celiac disease, let's talk about gluten sensitivity.
Sure. For every one person that has gut symptoms, celiac, with a sensitivity to wheat, there are 8 that don't. They've got symptoms somewhere else. And in Italy, they've got 37 centers. It was 37 a couple of years ago, maybe more than that now, that are designated by the government as wheat-related disorder centers. And
Wow.
that's where you go to get a diagnosis of a sensitivity to wheat, because if they give you a diagnosis, your food's a tax deduction. And by the way, those people, and anyone can do this, but those people know, and so they do it. They go to the pharmacy to get their food. So they go to the pharmacy and place an order. The next day, they've got fresh gluten-free pasta or cookies or croissants or whatever you want. So when you're traveling in Italy, go to the pharmacy and order your gluten-free food. It'll be there the next day.
That's amazing. I never knew that.
Yeah. So the 37 centers, I think 28 or 29 were gastroenterology, a couple of pediatric, a couple of allergy centers. They identify wheat-related disorders, and they say for every person who's referred to their center, 7% of them turn out to be celiacs. 93% of them turn out to be non-celiac gluten sensitivity. That's how prevalent the NCGS is, the non-celiac gluten sensitivity. The ratio is more than, I don't know what that ratio would be. It's certainly more than 10 to 1, so it's 93% to 7%. So that's how common it is to have a sensitivity to the wheat that doesn't manifest as celiac. So if your doctor says you don't have celiac, you're fine, it's okay to eat wheat, you know that doctor's not current in the literature. Because not having celiac, which is good for everybody to not have celiac, not having celiac does not mean that wheat's okay for you.
Well, a lot of people who are gluten sensitive, they don't present with intestinal problems.
Right.
So what are some of the other ways that could present?
Right. The wheat-related disorder centers in Italy, they refer to it as a lack of well-being. That if you don't have gut pain or gut problems or diarrhea or constipation or bloating or cramping in your gut, and you have symptoms somewhere else, they fall into the category of lack of well-being. What does that mean? It means everything else. Fatigue, chronic fatigue, joint pains, thyroid problems, kidney problems, reproductive system problems, loss of hair, recurrent anemias. There are hundreds and hundreds of symptoms that are associated with the sensitivity to wheat.
When somebody comes in to your practice,
one of the first things we'll do is run a test to see if we have to eliminate gluten.
okay,
Because no human can digest wheat. No human has the enzymes to digest wheat. There are many research papers on that, but it doesn't make everybody sick. And it's only after you cross the line, it's called the loss of oral tolerance. When you cross the line, then you have a problem with wheat. So when is that? It depends on the individual. It just really, you could be 2 years old, 22 years old, or 92 years old. But when you lose oral tolerance, and how do you know? If you have elevated antibodies to wheat, if your immune system is fighting wheat, you got a problem with wheat. That's how you know, is if your immune system says so. And so you just have to check, and you just have to do the right test to check.
Okay, I'm going to use myself as an example here. So I did the IgG food sensitivity test, the 96 different foods blood test, and it came up in categories, at high sensitivity, medium, and mild. So
Right.
both wheat and gluten came up in my mild.
Yes.
So this begs another question. Okay, so I've been eliminating even the mild ones from my diet. And even though I didn't really think I had a problem with it, because I'm one of those people that was eating it and not really feeling it in my intestines, once you have that show up, can you go back?
No, never, never. Mrs. Patient, when you get a vaccination for measles, they give you a shot of the bug measles. And your brain says, whoa, what's this? This is not good for me. I better fight this. And you start making your brain says general. And in your immune system, you've got Army, Air Force, Marine Corps generals sitting around with nothing to do. General, you now are General Measles. Take care of this. General Measles starts to build an assembly line. The assembly line starts making soldiers, and they're special forces. They're very highly trained soldiers, and their job is exclusively to go after wheat, nothing else. To go after, I'm saying not wheat, to go after measles, nothing else. When these special forces are going through the bloodstream, they're looking for measles everywhere they go, everywhere. And they fire their chemical bullets, these high-powered rifles called cytokines, and they destroy the measles bugs. General Measles is watching all of this. When all of the measles bugs are destroyed, General Measles says, all right, turn off the assembly line. We don't need any more soldiers right now. And then within a couple of months, so the assembly line turns off, and then the antibodies you've made last for a few months. So within a couple of months after that, so 3 months, 4 months later, you've got no more antibodies to measles in your bloodstream. If we were to check you right now, you shouldn't have measles antibodies unless you were exposed, and then you should.
Mm-hmm.
But General Measles is now vigilant the rest of his life. The rest of his life, he's called a memory B cell. And if measles ever comes back into your system, General Measles, who's vigilant every day, gets activated and just has to flip the switch. He doesn't have to build the assembly line that takes months. You just have to flip the switch, and in a day or two, you've got measles antibodies. The special forces are out there in the bloodstream to find those measles bugs from the guy who was sitting behind you in the plane coughing, and you inhaled measles bugs from him. And so the special forces come out to find them in your body and wipe them out. That's what vaccinations are designed to do. That's why if you go to Africa, you need vaccinations for weird diseases months and months ahead of time, like yellow fever and dengue fever and things like that. But if you go back 20 years later, you just need a booster shot 2 weeks before you go. You just have to wake up general yellow fever, dengue fever. Just have to wake them up so they're out there in the bloodstream ready to go. So memory B cells. When you make elevated antibodies to wheat, you develop memory B cells. So they're going to be there to protect you the rest of your life. You can't fool Mother Nature. You can't be a little pregnant. You can't have a little wheat. Once you cross the line and you make elevated antibodies, and that's easy to identify in the right blood test, now you've got general wheat. You have a memory B cell to wheat, and he never goes away.
Okay. Even with a mild sensitivity, it doesn't matter, right?
Well, you see, the problem with the test that you did, the IgG test that you did, looking at wheat, it only looks at alpha-gliadin. Now, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Think of proteins like a pearl necklace. Hydrochloric acid undoes the clasp of the pearl necklace. Now you have a string of pearls. Our enzymes from the pancreas, the liver, the gallbladder, the microbiome, our enzymes act as scissors to snip that pearl necklace smaller and smaller and smaller, smaller clumps of the pearl necklace, smaller clumps, until you get down to each pearl of the pearl necklace. That's called an amino acid.
Mm-hmm.
Those amino acids go right through the walls of the bloodstream because the inside lining of your gut's lined with cheesecloth. And so it only lets really small molecules get through. And so the inside lining lets the single amino acids get through to get into the bloodstream. The problem with wheat is that no one has the enzymes to break it down completely. The best we can do is break it into clumps of pearls from the pearl necklace. There's a 33 clump, a 27 pearl clump, an 11 pearl clump, all these different clumps called peptides. And what the literature shows us is that there are 62 peptides to poorly digested wheat. 62! But every laboratory in the country only checks one. And so the test you had checked one, and you didn't have a problem with that. Well, it doesn't mean you don't have a problem with wheat. It means you don't have a problem with that one particular peptide. And that's called alpha-gliadin. But there's 61 other peptides that you may have a reaction to. And every lab in the world only looks at alpha-gliadin. And a new lab opened up 8 years ago, and they looked at 10 top peptides. And that's been a godsend because you find so many more of these people who have a problem. Now there's a new lab that opened up that does 26 different peptides in one blood draw. So you have a much more likely chance of doing a comprehensive evaluation to find out.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. So are those tests that you're referring to, are they on your site, thedoctor.com?
Correct, they are. And that's the dr.com. Don't spell the word doctor out.
Yes.
The dr.com. And those tests are there. Yes.
Okay, great. Anybody who's just done the IgG really needs to take it, sounds like, a little bit further so they can get a more comprehensive report on what's going on.
That's very true. That's very true. And not just IgG. Those that have done skin prick tests, that's IgE. And that's a really good test. You know, it's important to do. But when that comes back negative, that doesn't mean that you can eat wheat. Heck no. You just check the Air Force. That's all. You check IgE for wheat. What about the Army or the Marines?
Oh,
IgG,
okay.
IgA. You know, that, well, I didn't check that. Well, why not, doctor? Aren't there different branches to the armed forces? How come you only check the Air Force? Well, you don't ask them that because they'll just walk out of the room, right?
Right.
And just walk away. But the testing in our country today is so archaic in many ways.
Primitive.
Primitive, yes.
It's a little frustrating for a lot of people who go to their well-meaning doctors and they want to get these kind of tests and the doctors may not know about them. Do you have any suggestions?
Sure. You can get a lot of information at thedoctor.com, thedr.com. And I've got training programs. That's what I do. You know, I travel the world teaching doctors about this stuff. So for people who want to understand this more, that's what the book, The Autoimmune Fix, is all about.
Yeah.
That's why that book was written, was to explain this concept. And when you read it, it's like, oh, this just makes perfect sense. I get that. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's a wonderful book. And one of the things I find fascinating in the book is when you talk about predicted autoimmunity. Can you explain what this means?
Oh, sure. It was Melissa Arbuckle, an MD, PhD in 2003. She wrote an article about lupus, and she went to the VA and looked for people with lupus. And in this one VA center, she found 136 people with lupus. Well, if they're in the VA center, they're veterans. If they're veterans, they're in the armed forces. If they're in the armed forces, they had their blood drawn many times over the years while they were in the armed forces. And what most people don't know is that the government's been saving and freezing most of that blood since 1978. So they've got tens of millions of samples of our service people's blood. Dr. Arbuckle knew this, and she went back and asked for permission to look at the blood work of the currently diagnosed lupus patients when they were healthy in the Marines or in the Navy. And she got permission, so she got the old blood work and compared it to the new blood work for all these people. And what she found is that the antibodies for lupus were elevated years and years in advance. Years in advance, when there were no symptoms. And that makes perfect sense, because antibodies, Mrs. Patient, you have an entire new body every 7 years. Every cell in your body regenerates. Some cells are really quick, like the inside lining of your guts every 3 to 5 days. Some cells are very slow. But every cell in your body regenerates, every cell. How does that happen? Your immune system has to get rid of the old and damaged cells. You know, our cells get damaged every day, thousands and thousands of times a day, just by living on the planet. It happens. So your immune system has to get rid of the old and damaged cells to make room for new cells. So if you do a blood test and you look at thyroid antibodies as an example, you look at any of them, but you'll see that most people are in the normal range for antibodies to thyroid. And it's not 0, it's 0 to 34 usually. So it's normal to have some antibodies to your thyroid because it's getting rid of old and damaged cells. It's normal to have antibodies to your brain because we're getting rid of old and damaged cells. And when you're getting rid of these cells, the new cells are being formed at the same time. So that's normal. But when you have elevated antibodies, you're killing off more cells than you're making. And the result is you're wearing down the organ. If it's your thyroid, you're wearing down your thyroid. And all of a sudden, a few years down the road, you've got cold hands and feet, you wear socks to bed, your husband says your feet are really cold, you can't lose weight even if you don't eat for 3 days, that your metabolism's slow, you feel a little sluggish, feel a little depressed, all signs of a thyroid problem. And it is often the case that you've been killing off those thyroid cells with the antibodies to the thyroid, and because of molecular mimicry, I forgot a step there, that if you have, for example, a wheat sensitivity, and if the weak link in your chain is your thyroid, when you make antibodies to wheat, you start making antibodies to your thyroid. And you kill off more thyroid cells than what is normal. You have toast for breakfast, more antibodies. Sandwich for lunch, more antibodies. Pasta for dinner, more antibodies. Day after week after month after year. And you're killing off cells, killing off cells, killing off cells, until one day you've killed off so many cells, now you're starting to get some symptoms. And cold hands and feet and the other early symptoms of thyroid. But they do a blood test for your thyroid and everything's normal. And you wonder, well, why is everything normal, but I'm feeling like this? And then you listen to this again, so then, I heard somebody somewhere, oh, I remember where that was. And then you bring this talk back up again, and you realize, wait a minute, has my thyroid been being killed off for many, many years? So Dr. Arbuckle did this with the lupus patients, and she found that every single lupus patient had elevated antibodies to their brain. Not to their brain, sorry. To the lupus, all 7 lupus antibodies were elevated years before they ever had a symptom. Years. Most often 9 years, sometimes 14 years before they ever had a symptom. And that makes sense because you have to be killing off tissue for quite a while before you've killed off so much tissue that it can't function properly anymore.
So had the people had this test and had this information ahead of time, they could have taken steps so that full-blown lupus may not have manifested.
That's exactly right. And that's the world of predictive autoimmunity. Can you predict if a person is on the spectrum going to get a problem or not? And the answer is yes, with a great deal of accuracy. It's a simple blood test. And the most common blood test now that does this looks at 24 different tissues in your body, 6 to your brain, 3 to your heart, 2 to your thyroid, your lungs, your liver, your reproductive system, your muscles, your bones. Is my body attacking my own tissue right now?
And what is that blood test called?
It's called the multiple autoimmune reactivity screen.
Okay.
It's array number 5 or test number 5 from Cyrex Labs. And that's on my website also.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Wow, well, we know that there's so many chemicals in our environment that we're being bombarded with. But I don't want to discourage people because there are some things we can do about it, you know. So we're having all these chemicals in our body which can contribute to intestinal permeability.
Yes.
And one of the big ones from all my research is glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup, and it's just one of the big culprits. So if you're not eating 100% organic, you're getting glyphosate in your body.
Right.
And that does create problems in the gut.
Yes.
So it's really important, don't you agree, that people eat organic?
Oh, it's more important than ever because we're wiping out the species. I don't say that lightly. We're wiping out the species. The World Wildlife Fund did a study published 2 years ago, and on average, there's a 58% loss of the populations of all mammals or every vertebrate species, everything with a spine. That means insects, birds, mammals, fish. 58% of everything is gone between 1970 and 2011. In 41 years, there's been a 58% reduction in populations of everything that lives on the planet. The birds was 35%. The mammals living near fresh water was 78%. 78% of the beavers are gone. The porcupines, gone in 41 years. Why? They're drinking the water. And if you were drinking the water coming out of the stream, you'd get cancer quicker and you'd be unable to reproduce just like the animals. And then the second study, they did a meta-analysis. That means they looked at a bunch of studies on the same subject. And the subject was sperm count in healthy men. What did they find? From around the world, there's been a 59% reduction in sperm count between 1974 and 2011, so 37 years, and a 59% reduction in sperm count. What does that mean? Scientists worry about extinction of a species at 72%, and we are at 59% in 37 years. What do you think is going to happen in the next 20 years?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, we're wiping out the planet, everything that lives on the planet, and it's coming very quickly. I never thought I'd be a doomsday kind of guy, but when you read the science, you just have to get people to understand this. And then you look at all the little things you can do, like stop using plastic bags. I go to the shopping mall and I buy my vegetables organic and I put them in a plastic bag, and check them out, bring them home. I take them out of the bag and I throw the bag away. And it's just waste that doesn't biodegrade, right? So I decided to keep the bags after the last time I went shopping and keep them in the car. And twice I've pulled in and gone inside and said, oh my God, I forgot the bags. But this time, about a week and a half ago, I went shopping and I got a cart and I was going to get some vegetables and I was tearing the first plastic bag off of the vegetables and I realized I have a whole bag of plastic bags in the car. The last time I unpacked in the house, I put all the plastic bags in one bag and just put them back in the car for next time I go shopping, so I'm not just throwing these things away and making for more trash. So I go in to go shopping again, I get a cart, I come up to the root vegetables, start to tear a bag off, and I say, oh no, I forgot. Oh, the bag, I forgot the bag. Are you kidding me? It's in the car. Oh, I'll do it next time. No, do it now. Oh, I'm busy, I don't have time. Do it now. Those 13 plastic bags that you're not using again, but that you're not using because you're going to use your other bags again, that's going to save 13 bags from ending up in the ocean, right? So
Yeah.
That's the way I thought about that, and it really helped to do that.
Yeah, and this is a really interesting topic because I think we've given up a lot for convenience.
Yes.
That's a whole nother subject, but I don't want to leave our listeners with a feeling of there's nothing they can do, because there's plenty they can do to protect themselves and their family. So do you have any suggestions for people? Just some steps that they can take other than get these tests, go to the dr.com and really dig into this knowing ahead of time notion so that you don't create these diseases. But what can you do from your standpoint that will really assist in mitigating some of the damage caused by all these chemicals we're being bombarded with?
Really good question. Most important thing, read the book, The Autoimmune Fix. That's what the entire book's about, is how to do that. A couple basic things. Everyone wakes up in the morning. Most everyone goes to the bathroom first thing. After that, the very next thing you do is drink 2 big glasses of water. Critically important. You have to have enough water to carry the toxins out of your body. And the other thing that's critically important is to be kind to yourself and understand that this is going to be a journey. And if you allocate 1 hour a week, just 1 hour a week to this process, Tuesday nights after dinner, Sunday mornings before church, I'm going to read for an hour, or I'm going to listen to a podcast. And just an hour a week, within 6 months, you've got this down. You understand the concept that you've been studying, and you have successfully implemented it into your lifestyle. There's a bunch of to-dos that you can do, but if you don't do them, they aren't worth much, right? So it's really being patient and kind to yourself, doing the best you can, and just allocate 1 hour a week to this whole process. Makes a world of difference.
The education is so important, which is why I do this work. And just take the time to look things up, because it's really empowering when when you understand, and to take your health into your own hand. I even tell people on the show, I said, don't believe everything I say, look it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's really about empowering people to know that they have the resources. I mean, for as long as it's going to last, but we have the internet where you can look things up. You have to be a little bit discerning, but just use good judgment and you'll find the information. But this book was just terrific, and I think it's just a must-have for people who really care about their health and the health of their families. So thank you, Dr. O'Brien, for being our guest today. So we've been discussing the Autoimmune Fix, which I'm sure is available everywhere.
Yes, it is. And if you go to the dr.com, it's on the home page there. When you click on it, it takes you to Amazon. But you then can download some extra handouts that help with in reading the book. But it's available everywhere, and it's just a wonderfully informative book. And if I do say so myself, I'm very proud of it that it came out really well.
And you should be. So are you writing another one?
Yes, our new book comes out in September, and it's called You Can Fix Your Brain. 1 hour a week to the best memory, productivity, and sleep you've ever had.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I'm going to have you back on when that book comes out so we can discuss that too. That sounds fascinating. I love to share with our listeners anything about the brain, because it's so important. You lose your brain, just ask anybody who's been affected by Alzheimer's or has a relative that has one of those neurological diseases, and your quality of life goes down pretty rapidly.
Yes, it does, unfortunately, and this book is designed for those people.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to that. So thank you very much, Dr. O'Brien, and thanks to our listeners, and we'll be back next week with another show.
Thank you.